Hey, this is Nick from Bayside, and you're on rockforevermagazine.com.
Hey guys, it's Tori from Rock Forever Magazine, and I am here right now with Nick from Bayside. How's it going today?
It's rainy, but going well.
You picked the most gloomy day of the year to be in Orlando, but you know what? You're brightening it for sure.
I hope so.
Yeah?
I mean, I'm okay with gloomy. Rain kind of really bums me out, though.
Yeah.
I want to be somewhere where there's no weather, just zero weather.
But the beauty is, any fans of the band that are here in the midst of this gloomy day get to come to the concert, and it'll be better immediately.
Spending a Saturday night in Orlando is definitely going to be a lot of fun.
Well, we are going to start with some finish a sentence for you.
Cool.
So you're good. Now, the highlight of your career so far was when?
I would say it was pretty recent, actually. Okay. I really enjoyed playing Riot Fest in Chicago.
Yeah.
It was also a rainy day, so I wasn't expecting a lot, but by the time we went on, kind of felt like we were in front of like a hometown crowd, and there was like, awesome. You know, well over like 12, 13,000 people and really good energy, and just overall, I stayed at the festival that night and saw the Pixies and Rocket from the Crypt. So just overall, like I do enjoy playing, but I'm a really huge music fan. So getting to see bands that I either haven't seen in 15 years, like Rocket from the Crypt, or bands that I've never seen, like the Pixies, was a fun day. And then we also played, so it was cool.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing, but I think now we need to find a way to top that even further.
I have a new goal, actually, and it's to play the Pool at the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas.
What?
It's like right on the boulevard, and they do shows that are probably the size shows we would do.
Right. Probably
there. I don't know how to make that happen, though.
No, you know what?
That's my new goal.
The thing is, this is going on YouTube, so I bet somebody is watching that can make this happen for us. You just never know, so shout out if you're that person. And now, if you could join any other band for a day, it would be?
The Killers, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, they've really recently, I've always liked them a lot, and I think recently in this past year or two, I've realized that they're kind of my version of like just a bigger band, you know? Like I grew up in the scene and going to shows where a couple hundred people there, 1,000 people, and you know, bands our size. And Killer's like the only big band that I like, that I look up to, you know? I grew up on bands like Green Day,
right? But
I think in the past 10 years or so, just being more of like a musician and touring artist and stuff like that, I think I got a little caught up with seeing bands in smaller clubs. So seeing a band like the Killers play in front of like 50,000 people or something like that, and just seeing how much fun they look like they're having, how great it sounds, the light show, all that type of stuff. It's like somehow my version of like a big band, like seeing the Stones or something, you know, like for what someone's parents might have been into. To me, the Killers, I think, is turning into that, where I think that they're important for rock music, and then seeing them in like a huge atmosphere, whether it's an arena or festival or something like that, it's breathtaking. It's really inspiring.
I mean, you seem so dedicated to this band, so now I'm like, I wish I could find a way to get you to join the band for a day. Like,
maybe, how about I just hang out for a day?
I mean, yeah, that could work too. There we go. And now the biggest challenge you overcome as a band was?
You know, I mean, it's more of like a how to sustain longevity thing. Right. You know, it's not necessarily, you know, we in 2005 we had an accident, lost our drummer, I broke my back, and like that is definitely the biggest thing we've ever had to overcome. But all we ever want to do is be able to write music, put out music, and tour. And there's a lot of times where we have to kind of not do the thing that's best for us just to keep doing that. Right. You know, there's like a stupid side of the music business where there's way too many people who kind of have your hand in your pocket and have their hand in your pocket, and sometimes they benefit more than you, or they benefit just as much as you, and a lot of times you just have to make decisions based on what's best for you. But a lot of times, just to keep the longevity of the band in mind, sometimes we do have to do things that maybe other people benefit more from, but at least we get to kind of make one or two steps forward. Right. So kind of respecting yourself enough to do what's right, but also realizing like the game plan and like the full aspect of your band, like having knowing that you want to be playing in 10 or 15 years and not necessarily making a decision that only matters today.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things we've had to make plenty of those decisions over our career. We've been a band for 14 years. It's a long time.
That is a very long time. And I mean, I got a sidetrack from the finish the sentence real quick because I did have a question about, you guys have been a band for 14 years. What characteristics do you think it is about the band that has kept your fans so loyal?
I mean, I think we're pretty transparent as far as who we are and what type of people we are, the kind of music we write. I think it's just super relatable. We've never been some huge unattainable band. I think when people come to a show, you could find one or four of us to talk to, and there's no doubt about it. We're just four normal dudes who enjoy what we do and play music, and I think that's super relatable to the people who know us, and the kind of people who like that about us. It breeds a certain kind of fan that comes to the show. It's not necessarily for everyone, and that's why we've always gradually grown, because I think more and more people get it, but it's not an overnight thing where all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of more people understand what we're about. I think it's a specific thing that you have to enjoy our music, but also get kind of the culture behind our music and who we are.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you guys have had a really good balance of being strategic with the business side, but also keeping it real with your fans. And that's brilliant.
Yeah, it takes work and care, but we do it.
Yeah. And last, finish a sentence here. You can't go a day without.
Definitely hockey, but there's like 2 months out of the entire year where there's nothing, I would say. Like really July to September is when it's like dead and I feel like I need to occupy my time. Yeah. But the 10 months out of the year, other than that,
pretty much every day
hockey
then.
On the brain, yeah.
At first I was thinking you played hockey every day. I'm like, so how do you do that on tour? No, just watching it.
Yeah.
But your album Cult is out now, and the term cult has sort of been around with the band for a long time, associated with the fans and the band. So why did you guys decide to name the album Cult?
The decision was kind of like I think we came to this realization that it's our 6th album. That's a lot, and we're starting to realize. I think the past couple of years have like kind of went by quickly, and we start looking that it's our 6th album. We've been around for 14 years, all this stuff. So I mean, we kind of just started to feel a good sense of pride with how long we've come, and we're still as successful or big, whatever word you want to use. Like, we're bigger than ever, we're just as successful as ever, and it takes a lot of work, like we mentioned already, and it just felt like a good way to kind of acknowledge our fans. And the artwork has all of our initials on it. It has an ode to each of our previous albums on it, and the word cult is definitely like an ode to our fans. So we're super prideful of where we've gotten to, and it certainly would, not have been any easier or probably not even possible without our fans. So we wanted to call it that, and then the cover artwork came because we wanted it to. Cult kind of has like a negative connotation to it, but we wanted it to look like that, but not be like that. All the art, everything in the artwork has like very positive meaning, and the music just kind of felt like, another progression from Killing Time, and Killing Time was a progression from our previous 4 albums. So, I don't know. It felt like a good culmination. By no means is it like a final thing, but it seemed like a good culmination. Like, we kind of had enough good ideas to be like, all right, this is going to be cool and unique.
Right. And this album definitely is a big milestone for you guys. So I know you spent a long time, more than usual, working on this. About 2 years is what I read. That's true. So how did your vision for the album evolve from start to finish? Because, 2 years, a lot can change.
I don't know that our last two albums actually we took a while to write Killing Time too, maybe even more than this one. And Killing Time Cult definitely took a while too. The reason it took a while actually, last time we did Warped Tour, we started kicking around some new tunes, and Taking Back Sunday had asked us to go on tour, so we took that tour. Then Alkaline Trio asked us to go on tour, so we took that tour. So it probably could have potentially been out a year earlier, but those are two pretty important tours for us to do. Just because they're our friends, we knew they were good opportunities for us, so we wanted to take those opportunities while they were still there. So it gave us time to kind of fine-tune a lot of the songs on Cult. So some of those songs, actually, even though they only came out about a month ago or so, I actually think Pigsty was the first song we wrote for this one, and that was pretty much done as a song right after that Taking Back Sunday tour ended. Right. So that was about 16 months ago. That song was done. Yeah,
so it's been a work in progress for a while. Definitely. And I heard in another interview that this album sort of encompasses your musical history, which is a pretty big claim. So what elements did you add to this album to ensure that it successfully represented what you're all about?
I mean, we are comfortable with the sound we've created in our 14 years, and our fans are, so we would never want to piss them off at all. So we just try and figure out how to like push the boundaries, but so it's not noticeable, so we could grow as musicians and lyricists and songwriters, and almost, to a fine ear, you could tell that we're pushing the boundaries a little bit, but to a lot of people, you won't really. It'll just sound like Bayside. Right. And reviews of the record, honestly, are funny to me because or not even reviews, but comments from Twitter or anything. Once they heard the new album, it literally ran the gamut of sounds like their first album, sounds completely different. Like everyone has different opinions on it, but I mean, it's us. It sounds like us, and. We could honestly say we would never write something that would, that knowingly our fans wouldn't like. So, I mean, the whole culmination of our musical history or whatever being all on this one album. Every album is going to be like that from now on. I think Killing Time was like that too. I think it's just everything that we realize we like about ourselves and our fans like about us. That's how we write now, and it's kind of been 2 albums in a row for sure.
I could say this one for sure sounds like the Bayside we know and love, but even better. So that's
really our goal. In so many words, we're how do we do this but better? How do we do this but better? How do we write that type of song but better?
And I mean, since you released your first album 10 years ago, you have evolved a bit, and I hear a lot of bands saying that it can be kind of tricky to grow as musicians. So did you ever feel pressure to maybe cater to current music trends or look into that sort of stuff? Or
no, it was hard early on just being us, because nobody, early on 10 years ago when we really started to hit the road a lot, we wanted to go on tour with bands like My Chemical Romance and Trio, but they were so much bigger than us at that point that we weren't even on the radar, So it was hard for us to find bands to tour with. So we wound up touring with screamo bands and stuff like that. We didn't know what else to do, so it just kind of wound up that way. Definitely never had pressure to cater, and I think that growing as a musician gradually is a lot harder than album 1 sounding completely different than album 2 and calling it experimental or growing or something. Anyone could write a completely different style of album and say it's growing. To grow and actually make yourself better and to have pride in what you sound like is not an easy thing to do, and it's a long process. So and no one does it. A lot of people 3 or 4 albums in, if they make it that far, maybe the third one or the fourth one is completely different than everything else, and under the guise of growing as a musician. But it's easier to just write completely different stuff, you know. It's harder to just try and push yourself to stay within your sound but write a better song.
Yeah, I mean, you see it happen all the time with bands where they're just going a completely different route and suddenly letting fans down. So it's good to see you guys are staying true to yourselves and not giving into any, you know, trendy things in music. But what's the story behind the song The Whitest Lie?
That song in particular, I mean, it's a better question for Anthony, but it's, to me, I mean, the whole album in a sense is kind of like we're growing up and dealing with adult things, and I think that song kind of has to do with like a little bit like transitive property too. Like, I think we used to, when we were younger, if there was a problem in our lives, kind of give it the middle finger and like run the other way. And I think there's a couple instances on this album where you got to work through problems as an adult, you know? And I think that's the biggest difference, I think, with this album are the lyrics. And I think people are really relating to them because they've grown up with us, you know? They're each album means a lot to them because it's 2 years, 3 years later in their life. And I think the people that we, you know, our fans are reaching adulthood now, and they're realizing that, you know, a problem they had with their girlfriend, maybe it's not worth bringing up, you know, maybe you got to figure it out and accept things, or you know, your own self-worth, you know, sometimes it's up to you, it's not up to how other people treat you. There's a lot of instances like that on the album, I think, that are just kind of adult problems and how to cope with them instead of kind of like that youth angst of just giving everything the middle finger and saying everything else is wrong. Sometimes you're wrong and you got to deal with it, you know?
It happens. And I know I was reading in another interview that the song Big Cheese is about your legacy, and that was a major theme throughout the entire album. So as a band, what kind of a mark do you hope to leave behind, and how do you hope to impact your fans?
Well, I mean, for us, it's all about like positivity. I think we obviously want to leave a very good impact and mean something to people, and we feel very grateful that we get the chance to even be that way, be that band for people. Like, people come up to us and say, you don't know how much you mean to us or how much you've gotten us through like hard times and stuff, and I say, yeah, I do, because my favorite bands did that for me, you know? So I feel like forever indebted to people who feel that way about Bayside as I do about like Bad Religion or Rancid or something, you know, a band that definitely helped me through things. So it's cool, and Big Cheese to us is it's a lot of fun to play, and it's just something that was on our mind, I guess, a little bit, you know. Once you start becoming a band as long as we are, it's kind of like you kind of just, you wonder what like your legacy is, but our legacy is exactly what we're doing right now on this tour, you know. There's a bunch of people every night like having fun between the ages of like 15 and 40, you know. We don't have a specific kind of fan, you know. There's people who have waited a long time for us to headline at this point, so for us to go out there and play like 20 songs, you know, it's a good long night, and we're playing a lot of songs that people like, and I think that's our legacy, is that there's people out there who know all 20 songs and know all like 100 or whatever songs we have on 6 albums. It's cool. I mean, we don't really, I think that song is more about not worrying about necessarily what legacy we're leaving, but kind of being proud at like where we've come, you know, for 14 years at this point.
Yeah, and it's super cool to think it's like a full circle moment that you've had your bands that have impacted your life, and now you're doing the same for your fans. It's really neat.
That's the actual good payoff, you know, like that'll never go away for me.
Yeah, and thinking back to some of your earliest albums, they're pretty nostalgic, I know, for your fans, and I'm sure they are for you guys as well. Yeah. So when you think back to, let's say, your first album, what's the best memory that comes to mind?
The first album I recorded with Bayside was self-titled, and that one For me, just the process was really cool. We lived in Manhattan when we made it, and we lived 2 blocks away from the studio. It was right by Madison Square Garden. So it was the first time in my life, although I'm a New Yorker, I've lived on Long Island my whole life. So it was my first time ever actually living in the city for an extended time, and it was rad. I mean, it was just a lot of fun to make that album. And if anything, like going back to growing as a band, the major growth, I think, in the change of our sound went from our first album to our second. I think 2 through 6 are all super consistent. The first one had different people. The old bass player wrote the lyrics. There's a different drummer. There's a lot of different personnel for that first one. So I think making self-titled was a lot of fun, the process was, but also that was a very important point in our timeline where we like really developed our sound. That album sounds terrible though. The actual sonic quality of it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of bands, when they look back at old albums, they're like, was that really? Yeah. Did that really happen? So I guess it's just, a lot of people say, the most recent release is the one they relate to the most. So would you say that about Cult?
I definitely felt that way about Killing Time, and Cult is becoming that. Okay. When we finished Killing Time, I was like, nailed it. This is the best album we ever did. And Cult, I think, is more of it's like growing on me. The more and more we get to play the songs, right. Like I feel like, if anything, we wrote these songs like kind of remotely via email, sat in a practice room for like 2 hours here and there, and then we recorded them. So I feel like with Killing Time specifically, we spent a whole lot of time in a room together going over and over and over the songs to really perfect every like inch of every song. And Cult, I think it came together a little easier, and it was done a little bit more remotely. So I feel like I didn't feel as attached to the songs when we were actually recording them. So I know I love it. I think it needs time for me to like resonate more with me.
Yeah, and I guess being on tour, you're sort of building memories with these songs every night that you play them live.
Too, for sure.
Yeah, and we got to sneak a fun question in before we finish this interview. You guys were on Punk Goes Pop a few years back. So if you had to cover a current pop song right now, which one would you choose?
I haven't. I do listen to the radio. I haven't listened to the radio in a long time. I don't know what. I would say like Sarah Bareilles, something by her. Uh-huh. I don't know that it would necessarily be that like current, the Brave song. Maybe I like, what album was it? 2 albums ago?
I can't
Something
keep
by
track.
her. I would just say if she's on the radio, something by her. I think it would be pretty cool. Yeah.
That's a good choice, and that's the first time I've heard that name with that answer. So with that question, so you guys are on tour right now. What are your upcoming plans for right after this?
We have about a week off, and we go overseas with Alkaline Trio. Right. And then we have about 3 weeks off, and we do all of Warped Tour.
Right, that is going to be a pretty big deal, and I'm sure your fans are getting really stoked for that. And anybody wants to follow you, Twitter, Facebook, everything like that?
Well, Bayside on Twitter and Instagram is at Bayside Band, and my personal one is at Nick Bayside for both of them too. Got
to give a shout out to the personal account for sure.
I love
More followers.
I love it. It's so much fun. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out. This has been awesome. Everybody watching, make sure you check out Bayside if you haven't already. Their album Cult is on iTunes now. Subscribe for more interviews, and I'll see you next time. Bye.